Kevin Warsh is being marketed as someone that I think that he's not. A Fed reformer, a hawkish guy, a guy who's going to come in and stop the money printing. But to me, in reality, those things are not true. Kevin Warsh he's not new to this. Like, even though he is very, very young, this guy is very, very accomplished. In February 2022, Warsh left his vice president and executive director post at Morgan Stanley to join the administration for President George Bush. He served as special assistant to the president for economic policy. So this guy, he's not new to this, okay? The last time everything melted down, guess who was in the room? Warsh was. And what did he do when everything did melt down? He helped rescue the system. Don't just take my words for it. Like, he was in there in 2008.
Warsh has been at the right hand of Ben Bernanke throughout the financial crisis, throughout his time at the Fed, has been a key player throughout the financial crisis and in determining Fed policy, and in particular with the relationship with Wall Street. He's one of the few members of the Fed, the only member of the Fed to actually work on Wall Street. He was at Morgan Stanley before coming to Washington. His departure will be seen as an important turning point for this Fed, and he cites, doesn't cite a specific reason, says he was privileged for the opportunity to work with Chairman Bernanke, with the other Fed colleagues, and with the staff at the Fed. And in his own statement in the press release accompanying this word, Ben Bernanke says he deeply appreciated Kevin Warsh's insights, again, through this financial crisis, offers some praise for Kevin Warsh. This is an interesting moment for this Fed. Kevin Warsh has expressed some reservations about the quantitative easing policy. He has not dissented from any policy judgments. I'm told, according to a person familiar, this is a decision based strictly on the fact that he's been there for 5 years, maybe looking to return to the private sector as well. His term was not up until 2018, not leaving here because of policy differences, leaving because of perhaps other opportunities that are out there. So Kevin Warsh is leaving.
Okay, first of all, we know that's a lie. He has an interview of him saying as much, like his policies on his beliefs and his policies and what he actually believes in. Okay, and he will be back, and not only will he back this time, he will be the one in charge of it all. Although, the Fed has different people holding him accountable. He'll just be the face of it. There are different people on the board voting for the Federal Reserve increase rates or decrease rates. It's not just one person's responsibility. That would be insane. But his actions in 2008 tells you everything you need to know about him. In 2008, he actually supported the big banks. He was in charge of making sure that they recovered. As you see, he was a governor of the Federal Reserve in 2006 to 2011 after, he left. Because, if you think about it, he wasn't just like there, right? He was actually in the room making the decisions with the rest of the Fed chairs. And they let the system collapse. What does that tell you about him the next time something like this happens? And instead of like trying to make regulations, what he did, he decided to help. He was in charge of where the country went next. He was there when Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, AIG. He did a lot of the early work in QE, quantitative easing, which is something that he is very pro of. Like what I'm saying. Sometimes some of these people, they haven't held a real job or they haven't held the position before. Warsh has. He was there helping them make the decisions when the system was actually on fire, which actually could be a good thing because, the macroeconomics of the U.S. isn't looking too great right now. If the system starts melting down again, he might be the right person to, intervene because he already have experience with 2008. Maybe. Or also, he might just do the exact same thing of bailing everybody else, printing more money. So you have to remember what 2008 looked like. Because most people, when they think about it, they think it was just a housing crisis, right? But in fact, what really happened is the plumbing of the financial system actually froze, if you can put it like that. The credit markets basically broke and the banks could not trust each other because they were just selling junk to each other. Short-term funding collapsed entirely. It was mostly could the system continue and function in the same way that it was because everybody was selling junk and negotiating in bad faith with each other. And in 2008, in exactly March 2008, the Fed had to step in to save Bear Stearns because they were too big to fail. And there's a lot of those companies right now. If something happened and, I don't want to bring AI into it because AI is actually generating income, but so was Bear Stearns. I think a lot of people, that's their argument. Like, yes, AI is not a bubble because it's generating actual income, or it's not a scam because money is being generated and being spent. So were Bear Stearns and AIG. Money was being spent and moved around. They did some, magic switcheroo, and JP Morgan had to go out and buy Bear Stearns. All right, cool. And also, I think that was important because it signaled to the market when JP Morgan stepped in and the Fed helped. It was the first signal that, okay, the Fed is willing to help us. So every other company now came out with their hands begging for more. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, can you bail me out too? Hey, I could use some of that, right? And then Lehman Brothers fell. And then after that, all things started getting worse and worse and worse. And guess what? The Fed just rolled out the red carpet for everybody. They rolled out massive emergency tools they call TAF, which is term auction facilities, to help all of these people. TAF is the term auction facility, was a Federal Reserve program, 2007-2010, designed to alleviate credit shortage during the financial crisis by auctioning short-term funds to sound depository institution. It allows the bank to borrow at market-determined rates using a broader range of collateral than standard discount. Basically, what it did is it allowed the Fed to lend billions of dollars to banks that could no longer fund themselves. They had no money. The Federal Reserve printed all of these billions of dollars, which of course created inflation in our system and devalued our money, because the more you print, so basic supply and demand, just to save their buddies. If something happened again in 2020, 2026, 2027, 2028, whenever, because I don't think the system can continue to go on its last leg forever. In the real economy, right? If you have to let the economy decide. Like, if somebody is not good enough and they fail, let them fail. You're not supposed to be intervening in to save them, because the system will self-correct. That is a self-correction happening, and you're stepping in to save and basically undo the self-correction. The Fed basically give them well, not even basically, they give them access to emergency liquidity. Like, they give them a golden parachute, basically. They deemed them as too big to fail. Who else right now can we think of that's just too big to fail if something does happen? And Warsh is not new to this. He was there for all of this, and he was part of the planning that allowed these banks and systems and marked them as too big to fail. And I think the biggest differentiation is he any different than Jerome Powell? They are different. They do have different distinction on how they view things. The main point in Warsh's argument is that he thinks that central banks exist basically to respond to panics. In his words, they're supposed to respond with overwhelming force. When markets break, the Fed is supposed to show up and do that meme from 2008 and let the printers go brrr. Yeah, basically, if you think he's gonna be any different than Powell when it comes to printing money, he's not. It's just a matter in which he views when you should print the money. And that is part of his core belief. He's not against Powell printing a lot of money, which they are currently doing. He's against how it's printed. He believed that if there is a crisis, or when a crisis is happening, flood the system. Flood the system. Just print as much money as possible when there is an actual crisis. The one thing that he is not a fan of, he's not a fan of the constant QE, quantitative easing that's going on a little bit at a time. Jerome Powell keeps the printer warm. He will most likely keep the printer cold unless something breaks. Which, if money stopped being printed and there's less supply of it in the market, and these AI companies, which are holding the economy up, can no longer borrow very cheap money. You can never get 10 economists in a room and they all come up with the same conclusion.